Hey guys, what's going on? It's Ben here, and today I'm going to be doing a video talking about the Miami Heat and LeBron James, and specifically what would have happened if LeBron would have opted to stay in Miami instead of coming back to Cleveland. So for this video, I'm going to be mainly focusing on the years of 2014 to 18, how I think those 4 years would have played out, and ultimately whether the whether the Heat would have had just as much success as the Cavaliers had during that span, whether they would have had a similar dynamic to what they had between 2010 to 14, what additions or subtractions they might have made, and basically how the team would have fared and how I perceive that they would have basically just worked. So I'll give you a brief overview of the Heat in the 2014 offseason and what they did in place of LeBron coming and what they would have done different if they would have had him. So basically what the Heat did with the amount of money that they had left over when LeBron decided not to re-sign was they actually had Chris Bosh coming off the books as well. So they re-signed him to the max, which he hadn't had previously. Most people know that all three of the big three had taken a huge pay cut when they got together. But instead of giving Bosh a lower pay cut because LeBron wasn't coming back, so they could give Bosh the full max like he wanted, and they were able to convince him to stay better because of that, because he had some other tempting offers, but because of the max money, he was willing to stay in Cleveland or in Miami, excuse me. Along with this move, they used some of the remaining money that they would have used on LeBron to get Luol Deng, along with Josh McRoberts, who together were making about $16 million a year. Luol Deng about $10 million a year, and McRoberts about $6 million a year. So without those two, and without Chris Bosh getting the max, which was around 25, he maybe would have signed for like 18. If you add those totals up, LeBron would have made around $23 million a year, which I think he would have been willing to take from Miami. And so, with that being said, they would have basically a returning core of Chalmers at point guard, I think you'd say, and Dwayne Wade shooting guard, LeBron small forward, Bosh power forward. And they actually had acquired Hassan Whiteside during the season, so Hassan Whiteside would have been the starting center for this team. Then coming off the bench, they still would have had Norris Cole, and I think Ray Allen would have stayed if LeBron would have stayed, so they'd have Ray Allen. And besides that, really, that's the extent of who they had coming off the bench, who were playing meaningful minutes. No one else was really contributing that much off the bench. They had a lot of different guys come in and out of the team this season, and basically, I don't think that they would have signed as many guys as they did. They had 21 different guys playing for them during this season. I think that they would have had more of a normal roster. Another guy coming off the bench would have been Chris Anderson. He, I think, would have been a sixth man for them. I think a big difference for this team to talk about would be whether or not they would have still acquired Goran Dragic from the Phoenix Suns during this season. He got traded to the Heat and has since been a good player for them. He's been an All-Star this last year, actually, and he was on the All-NBA third team, I think, two to 3 years ago. But when I think about it, I don't really know if he would have re-signed with the Heat. I mean, I think he might have, because really the Heat gave up nothing to get him. I think like a second-round pick. The main thing with this was that they were going to have to re-sign him during the next season, but maybe they would have still just acquired him just for the 2014 to 15 season, just to have for half a season. I think if they would have done that, they would have maybe tried to make room for him to come back in 15 to 16, but then again, maybe not. Basically, when I look at this team, I think that they still would have been a title contender. The main difference, I think, would be that really Chris Bosh being injured would have been a big deal to them, I think. And along with that, Dwayne Wade actually had quite a bit of a bounce-back season, but I just don't know how effective their role players would have been, like Chalmers was honestly already starting to decline a little bit at this point and be less effective. Ray Allen, I think, would have just continually been less and less effective coming off the bench. Chris Andersen was being less effective. But I do still think that they'd be a title contender and probably would have made it to the finals. I think when you consider that LeBron made it to the finals that year, he beat the Hawks with just, as is basically Love and Irving were out for that series, so he had J.R. Smith and Tristan Thompson as his main sidekicks against the Hawks, and he was able to beat them. So I think with Dwayne Wade and Chalmers and an older Ray Allen and Goran Dragic for half a season, he would have been able to overcome them. Now the finals is the big question. Would a team consisting of as a starting lineup with Goran Dragic, older Dwayne Wade, a LeBron who is still in his prime, probably at power forward, really probably LeBron would have played power forward, and they would have brought in like Tyler Johnson, I think, off the bench, or I don't know, really they didn't have much off the bench. They might have put in, oh gosh, let's see here. Who was on their, I want to look at who was on their playoff roster, because it was a lot different than who was on their regular roster. Oh, they didn't actually make the playoffs. Well, I do think that they would have made the playoffs during this season, and probably the guy coming off to start small forward with Bosch out, I think the guy that would have started at small forward would probably have been Danny Granger, I suppose. He would have been the starting small forward, so you would have had a lineup of Dragic, Wade, Granger, LeBron, and Hassan Whiteside, with Chris Andersen, Ray Allen, Chalmers coming off the bench. In the finals, I honestly think that they could have won the title with that core. I think it would have really been a coin flip, because I think that most people thought that after Kyrie went out that LeBron would lose the finals versus the Warriors. But I think with that core that I'm talking about right there, he could have had a chance, because I think Goran Dragic better than J.R. Smith would have been, and Whiteside better than Mozgov, and really those two guys were the main sidekicks of LeBron in the 2015 finals. But like I think Wade's an upgrade over Dellavedova, and I think that would be a big difference, and I think that would help them win. The big difference is Bosch not playing the whole season and whether they would be good or not, because I think if Bosch would have been healthy, this would have been a dominant team. They would have had Dragic, Wade, LeBron, Bosch, and Whiteside as their starting lineup. Whiteside is a very underrated addition too that people didn't really think about when he went to the Heat. If they would have kept LeBron, that would have been a game changer, because they finally would have had the rim protector that they sorely were lacking during the run earlier in the seasons, like 2013 and 14. They hadn't had a rim protector, and that's why they really struggled against Indiana. But I think if they would have had them, they would have performed well and would have been a coin flip for who won the title. Now 15-16, again, I think they would have brought back most of the same core. I think that Ray Allen probably would have retired, but I'm just going to look up their 15-16 stats here quick, just so we can run by how the roster was different. Okay, let's see here. So there wasn't a huge difference in the team, and I don't think there would have been with LeBron. I think Dragic would have left because he would have wanted to get paid more in free agency, so that's the only major difference in the team. But they still had Bosch, they still had Dwayne Wade and Whiteside, and they still had Mario Chalmers for a little while because he went down with an injury. But I think they would have done some of the similar things that they did, like bring in an old Joe Johnson to be on the team and bring in an aged-up Amari Stoudemire to be on the team, because at this point he was more injured. So I think that their general lineup for the season would have looked like Chalmers at point, Wade at shooting guard, LeBron at the 3, Bosch at the 4, Whiteside at the 5, with their bench players being, let's see here, mainly Joe Johnson and Amari Stoudemire, and by this point they had lost Norris Cole, but as backup point guard they had Tyler Johnson, so I think that he would have been the backup probably. So this team still would have done really well. I think that they would have gotten to the finals. I don't think that Toronto would have put up a huge fight against them, honestly. And I think that they probably would have lost this one, actually, because I think Wade wouldn't have performed as well, and they wouldn't have Bosh in the playoffs, because if you didn't know, again, he was out during the regular season, or about half the regular season after the All-Star break. He missed 30 games, and so the team in the finals would have been more like Chalmers, Wade, LeBron, Amari Stoudemire, and Whiteside as the starting lineup, with Joe Johnson as the sixth man and Tyler Johnson. Now, I don't think that team is good enough to beat the 73-win Warriors, especially not with, like if Draymond doesn't get suspended, that's a big break that the Heat wouldn't have gotten, which I don't think that those exact plays would have been replicated in this finals for him to have kicked LeBron in a certain way that he would have got suspended. So I'm going to assume that Draymond's in the whole series, and I think that because of that, the Warriors would have won this series. And I think at this point, LeBron actually would have left Miami. I don't think that he would have stayed any longer. I think that he would have said, like, you know, we got one last title out of it, but I think, like, the ship has sailed, really. Wade, you're 34 now. You're still playing well, but I think that was kind of like the last ring of the rag, and I think you're kind of done now. As far as Joe Johnson, he wasn't really going to re-sign with them because he was a free agent, and maybe he would have, but how effective would he have been? Amari Stoudemire actually retired after this season. Chris Bosh effectively was done playing after this season. So if he would have come back, the core would have been Chalmers, Wade, LeBron, and Whiteside, and really not much else. They would have had like Tyler Johnson and like Josh Richardson. So do you think, let's say their starting lineup would have then been Chalmers, Wade, Richardson, LeBron, and Whiteside, with Tyler Johnson really as their only like competent bench player? I don't think that would have been enough to retain LeBron. I think that he would have gone to Cleveland and kind of acted out similar in that he would have had Kyrie and probably would have traded to acquire another star, or would have just kept Wiggins. And I think that they probably would have got to 2 finals and lost, and then he would end up on a new team again like he is now, like on the Lakers. Maybe not, he would not have necessarily gone to the Lakers, but I think he would have left Cleveland after that time too. So essentially, what do I think would have happened if he would have joined the Heat? I think he would have won one more championship like he did. I think that they would have had a really interesting team with Whiteside and Bosh and Wade and LeBron, sort of like a big four. And then I actually think that their 2015-16 team would have been more talented because they would have had Joe Johnson and Amari Stoudemire coming off the bench. But ultimately, because of Bosh's injury, that would not have been enough to overcome the Warriors in the finals. And they would have lost and disbanded because I think LeBron would have left at that point. Because remember, he was signing 2-year deals at this point where he had a 1-year contract and then an option. So I think in 2015, after winning the championship, he would have opted in. But then in 2016, when his contract was up, I think he would have just left. Those are my thoughts, guys. Hope you found this video interesting and a little bit informative. And if you have any thoughts on it, let me know in the comments. I'd be glad to hear from you and communicate with you. And I hope you guys have a good day. Bye.